Late one afternoon in April of 2019, a middle-aged woman named Mary was cutting up some vegetables in her kitchen in northern Spain when she heard a knock on her front door. And standing there was her next door neighbor, and she was holding this big box that was wrapped in wrapping paper and had a big bow on it, and then sitting on top was a tray of deep-fried rolls, or croquettes. Mary's neighbor was a 61-year-old woman named Carmen Marino. She took the croquettes and handed them to Mary, but Carmen was still standing right outside holding this box, and so Mary said, "What's going on here? What's up with this box?" Carmen was silent for a second and just kind of held this box out. And so Mary reached out and took this huge present. And she was like, "Thank you, Carmen. Like, what is this? What's going on?" Carmen would clear her voice and then she would say, "Mary, this is really embarrassing, but I need you to hold on to this box for a little bit. It contains my toys and I'm having company over at my house." And then Carmen kind of elaborated on why she had this huge box full of toys. She would tell Mary that she bought them with the intent of using them with her boyfriend, but a couple of months ago he had broken up with her. But Carmen had held on to these in the hopes that the boyfriend would eventually take her back. And so Mary said, "No problem, Carmen. I will look after your toys and I will enjoy your croquettes." And then Mary shut the door and she brought the croquettes into the kitchen, and then she took the big box of toys, she opened up a closet and she put it on the top shelf and then shut the door. Over the next couple of days, Mary expected Carmen to come back over and reclaim her box of toys. But Carmen didn't. A few months later, on September 29th, 2019, Mary was kind of doing chores in her house when she began to smell a really bad smell coming from the hallway closet. And so Mary opened up the closet, she reached the toy box, she pulled it down from the top shelf, she just smelled the box and she immediately recoiled. She carried the box into the kitchen and set it down, and then she opened up the box and inside was like this big thing that had been wrapped in tinfoil. And so Mary, she reached down and kind of began to peel back the tinfoil, and when she saw what was in there, she began screaming and ran outside and called the police. It would turn out Mary's neighbor, Carmen, her boyfriend, who was a 67-year-old man named Jesus Baranda, he went missing around the time that supposedly Carmen and her boyfriend broke up. And eventually the police called Carmen and said, "Hey, you were dating Jesus. We're gonna need to come to your house and search it." She knew she had a big problem because Carmen had murdered Jesus and cut his head off with a chainsaw, and she still had his head in her house. And so what did she do? Well, she boiled his head down and then she put it in a box, wrapped it in tinfoil, and then she wrapped that box in wrapping paper and then went next door to Mary's house. And then of course, the smell began several months later and she would discover Jesus's head. Carmen was convicted of murdering her boyfriend and she was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Police were never able to locate the rest of Jesus, but there's a running theory that Carmen may have used the rest of her boyfriend's body and ground it up and then baked him into her croquettes, but that's just a theory.